AME Church. Right over there.
Now, I know Paul Stewart. And what he's about to do, he has a tour of all the places on the Underground Railroad.
All right.
Don't go, man. He gotta go. What we want to do is just get the whole building that you standing in.
Fans. So I guess this must be your instructor here. Yes.
And your name is?
Darryl McGrath.
I guess we're gonna put the spotlight on you because you're late. They came before you.
Yeah.
I'm right on time. How do you do?
I left the door. How do you do? I'm only pushed up because I was looking at the clock, being like, oh my God, is there enough time?
Welcome here. This is the Stephen and Harriet Myers residence. Is another one of your folks here? Maybe? No?
I don't think so.
This is the Stephen and Harriet Myers residence. I want to explain a little bit about, what the story with this residence is all about. Is about the Underground Railroad. Most people are familiar with the Underground Railroad, at least in passing, right? So, and to the degree that people are familiar with it, it's usually what they're familiar with is Harriet Tubman and the role that she played. But of course, the story is much richer and deeper than all of that. And in fact, if you've given any thought at all to the story of Harriet Tubman, it probably seems as though there's a leg missing on the stool when you hear that story, because you think about people that you know and the things that they do. But for instance, case in point, people who win the Medal of Honor, okay? Conspicuous acts of bravery and gallantry in the face of incredible odds and without thought to self. But where'd that come from, right? They trained. They worked together with a group of people. They developed a spirit of camaraderie with a group of people, a team, and they understood who they were in relation to that team. And so that when they went out, they were being selfless, but they had been trained to be selfless, and it was in a context. And so they really lived up to, in a sense, lived up to or beyond the expectations that were being laid on them. Okay, and certainly Harriet Tubman's story is no different in the sense that she had support from a lot of different places in order to do the work that she did. Okay, and basically when you begin to tell the story of the Underground Railroad, whether you're talking about her alone, or you're talking about Levi Coffin in Cincinnati, or John Parker in Ripley, or John Rankin in Ripley, or anybody across the country, they came out of a context. And so the context of the story of the Underground Railroad is a story about people across the country. And in Albany, there were a number of people who lived here in Albany who were deeply involved in the Underground Railroad, and they were people that when Harriet Tubman came through, she would have stayed or connected with them as she made her journey across the state. Now, this area here in the mid-1850s was an area that was kind of removed from the rest of the city of Albany. It was on the outskirts of the city of Albany. In the late 1840s, John Johnson, who lived a couple of doors over from here, an African-American boat captain who, together with other members of his family, were involved in doing things in relation to the Underground Railroad. And so what John Johnson, among the things that John Johnson did in his work as a boat captain, is he successfully was able to kind of show that, as a symbol of his success, he built this building, 2.5-story brick, what do you call it, townhouse. It has what they call Greek Revival features, which basically means that the way the windows are designed harkens back to that element in society where they were trying to imitate the period of the Greeks, supposedly with some kind of a period of enlightenment. So that was something that a lot of buildings in the 19th century did. So in this area, this building was built. There were a few other buildings around this area, but as the 1840s moved into the 1850s, most of the buildings, newer buildings that are coming were like these little short ones that are, you see the yellow one over there, it has the windows crossways, or this one next door, more like a worker cottage. And this area became, went from being the outskirts where a few nicer buildings were built to a place that was populated by a large number of people of working class status. And but this building was here. By the mid-1850s, John Johnson, it's not clear what was happening with John Johnson. He had to be somewhere else, and he let his sister and her husband stay here in the mid-1850s. And that was Stephen and Harriet Myers. And that's why we call it the Stephen and Harriet Myers residence, because it's not Stephen Harriet.
I was thinking that when you said that, I was like, wow, they were advertising this.
Yeah, they were. And this is one of the things that, you know, I think the reason why people talk about the secrecy of the Underground Railroad, I mean, certainly there are individual things that were kept secret, but mainly because the mainstream, the powers that be, the authorities, things were kept from the authorities, and because of that, it was regarded as being secret. But if you were one of the little people, one of the people on the bottom, so to speak, it wasn't all that secret. You know, you had a sense of who was. Also, if you were an out-of-towner, it was something that might be kept from you. The world was a little bit different than today, and yet maybe not so different, because when people come from out of town, they don't necessarily know the ins and outs of the local community, and so they don't know who to ask, they don't know what to look for. And if you know, they do you know, get a sense of it, or if there are people who are of concern, then people withhold information. It's different today than it was then. But this handbill, it would have been a handbill, would have been maybe a quarter this size. We blew it up for the sake of doing presentations, right? So it says that it says at the bottom, right? So the Vigilance Committee of the Underground Railroad had meetings, and they had a meeting. Can you read that? What does it say?
Which part?
Just read from the top.
Okay. At a meeting of the Vigilance Committee of Albany held on the evening of the 27th of April, 1856, it was resolved that we, the Vigilance Committee, appreciate the untired efforts of our chairman, Stephen Myers, in behalf of the fugitive for the last 3 years. The following, do you want me to keep going?
Yeah.
Okay. The following resolution was offered by the Reverend John Sands of Albany. Resolved that we tender to Mr. Stephen Myers our sincere thanks for his faithfulness in the proper expenditure of all funds placed at his control for the benefits of the fugitive, and in accordance with the instructions of the committee. From the 12th day of September 1855 to July 15, 1856, 287 fugitives passed through Albany. Paid for passage, $542.36, board $76.60. T. Elkins, Secretary, and Seabrooks, Chairman.
Yeah, now you've all seen annual reports, right? What is that? Doesn't that sound kind of read like an annual report?
Yeah.
Now, the other thing I want to mention about it, obviously there are lots of names identified out here for the secrecy of the Underground Railroad. And also, so it mentions the committee here, but then down here, it says committee. And there's a bunch of names. So the committee that we're talking about up here is those people down there. And this says a meeting place. And where do you think that meeting took place?
In this house?
Would it have been here?
Probably right here. You know, so you're sitting in the place where some decisions were made about the Underground Railroad.
198.
Sure, that's a good thing to point out. Lumber Street was called Lumber Street prior to the Civil War. It got renamed Livingston Avenue after the Civil War, and the numbers on the street have shifted several times. But we're in the place where this stuff happened.
May I ask a quick question, Mr.
Sure.
Stewart? Where did you find this when you were doing your research? Where did you find the original of this document?
Well, I found it in the Washington County Historical Society. And the
What
but I'm
wrong there?
told that it got there because Tom Calarco found